Okay, so for this video, what I want you to do is start a new drawing based on your template. So again, I still have to say this, start a new drawing based on your template. Mine does things a little bit differently at home, but you should know the process. You don't need anything to start, okay? But what we're gonna do is walk through the steps that you're gonna need to do exactly what you need to do for this term project. So whether you're ready for this right now or you're not quite ready for it, you'll have this video to help walk you through the process. Now, the most important thing is that we want to use the power of XREFs. In order to, in theory, if we're working on a large project, we might have somebody drawing the elevations while I'm drawing the plans. So what we want to do is we want to, first of all, XREF in the plans into our elevation drawing so that if anything changes on the plans, I will be notified while I'm drawing the elevations. So again, this would be great if you're working on a big project with other people and somebody says, hey, listen, Paul, I've updated the plans for your elevations. You might want to reload those XREFs so you can see the changes. Okay, so again, this is also another way to work with XREFs. Essentially what we're doing with XREFs here is we're using them just as their definition, their very definition is that they're references. We need the plans in the elevation drawing as a reference, but we don't ever plan on the plans showing up in the elevations. You'll understand as soon as we get going. So the first step in this process is to XREF in the plans. Now, in order to draw the elevations, you're going to need the ground floor, the second floor, the third floor, and you'll need one tower drawing. You don't need more than one tower drawing because from the outside it looks exactly the same. So I'm going to do this relatively fast. I'm going to go XREF attach. I'm going to attach the ground floor. And I'm going to say, okay. So remember, it's going to go in at 0, 0, okay? And, we should be fine. Oh my God, it's enormous. Okay, well, that's just because my initial view is so small. Okay, so zoom out, and there you go. I'll tell you right now that there's going to be some people where their XREFs are not going to show up. And probably the reason for that is because you started a new drawing, and what you need to do is save this drawing in the same folder as all your other term project drawings, and then your XREFs will show up. So if your XREFs aren't showing up right now, then just go ahead and say save it into that folder, and then you might want to just open it again, and then I'm sure that your XREFs will show up. Okay, some people will have that problem. The other thing you might want to do is set your annotated scale to a 1/16 of an inch, just so you can see all the line types and everything correctly. All right, there's one XREF, ground floor. XREF attach, second floor. And guess where I'm going to put it? Right on top of the ground floor. I'm going to do the same for the third floor. And this is exactly what I want you to do. Don't get cute. Don't think you have a better way to do this. Do it exactly as I'm showing you. Take the third floor, that goes right on top. And now the tower. And there you go. Now, we're not talking about anything other than XREFs right now. What I want you to understand is, I have no idea what that is. That's a tree. Somehow I missed a tree in my ground floor, it looks like. So what you're seeing here again is all the XREFs that have come into the drawing. And remember how we talked about this tree view and list view? This list view doesn't really tell the story at all. You want the tree view because then it's pretty clear that it's the ground floor with the core, the grid, and the structure. The second floor with the core, the grid, and the structure. The third floor, core, grid, structure. And the tower, core, grid, glass, structure. Okay, so that's all your XREFs. The cool thing is, like I said, we're using XREFs as a reference here. And when we start to draw the elevations, again, we're going to be projecting lines from the plan to draw the elevation, but it's such a mess right now, right? It's pretty hard to see what we're looking at. What I want you to do is unload the levels that you're not currently working on. So let's say start with the ground floor, unload all the other ones. Now you can just focus on the ground floor. When you're done with the ground floor, then you can unload the ground floor. Don't detach it. I still want it there. And reload the second floor. And then you project all the lines from there. Cool. I mean, this is a really nice way to work with XREFs. I'm just going to reload them all for a second here, just so you can see them. Okay. Now, what we did in the other example, we talked about this traditional way of pinwheeling all the elevations from the plan. And like I said, that's nice, but you have to work with coordinate systems. An easier way to work on a lot of projects, this doesn't work for every project, but it's certainly going to work on this one, is the best elevation to draw right now would be the south elevation, if we were drawing the south elevation. In this project, we're drawing the north and then the west. Okay, so in fact, what I want to do is I kind of want to rotate this 180 degrees. So if I rotate it, I hope you understand what I'm doing here. I'm rotating everything. It doesn't matter about 0, 0. I mean, you could rotate it around 0, 0 if you want to, but you'll find out why that doesn't matter in just a second here. I'll turn my ortho back on, and I'm kind of a bit lost. There we are. So now that would be the north elevation that we want to draw basically this way. You know what? In thinking about it though, I don't mean to mess people up, but if we were to draw the north elevation, you know, this way, it would end up being backwards. Okay, so that would be the reason why I would want to do it that way. So it's still smarter to take all of these and rotate them 180 degrees. Okay, and now we can draw the north elevation by projecting lines. I'm going to go XL for construction line, and I'll just give you a brief idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, so we would draw, in fact, I should have done rays, right? Because, well, I guess it's okay to do construction lines, but you get the idea of how we would now start to create those guidelines. Now, we're only doing the north, we're only doing the west, we're not doing the east, and we're not doing the south. Okay, but here's the thing. We're not going to do the pinwheel system. We're going to project it down for this plan. These plans are going to project down like this. And then if you think about it, another big advantage of this way of doing things as opposed to the pinwheel is I'm going to copy these XREFs. Just copy them over anywhere and rotate them so that they're now facing the west, like that. Now what I can do is project my lines down like this. And you see what we've done? We've actually made copies of the XREFs, and we've rotated them so that now when we project lines down, this is the preferred view for the north, this is the preferred view for the west, but we also have them lined up horizontally. Unlike that pinwheel system where we would have to manipulate coordinate systems. Now what we can do is project from plan to elevation, and we can also project from elevation to elevation. Okay, so this is the way to do it. And this is exactly what I want you to do. So we're working with XREFs, so it doesn't matter if we had to do 4 elevations or 10 elevations. Copying the XREFs doesn't add anything to the drawing because they don't actually exist there. So we could, in theory, you know, copy these over and over and over, okay, and just keep rotating these so that we can project lines down, and so we have this relationship between plan and elevation, but we also have this relationship between elevation and elevation. Okay, so this is a really neat way of working with XREFs, okay? Now, I'm gonna say this once, and it's in a video, so nobody is gonna say they didn't know this, okay? When you submit this project, I want this orthogonal relationship between plan and elevation to be maintained all the way through. Every year, people end up detaching these or deleting them because they say they don't need them anymore. Okay, that may be true, but I need to see them. I need to see that you've gone through this process. If you go and detach these or erase them or whatever, you're going to lose marks, a significant amount of marks, because you're not using XREFs, or I can't see that you're using XREFs in the manner that I asked you to show me. Okay, so every year people end up doing that, and it's absolutely baffling to me. Okay, so you've been told in a video to maintain this orthographic relationship between plan and elevation in your final submission drawings. Maybe the thing to do now is for me to go to the finished drawing and show you a little bit more about what makes these elevations a little bit special. Okay, so if I go into model space, there you go. That's what I want to see in your final submission drawings. I have to see this relationship between plan and elevation, elevation and elevation. Okay, that's efficient. That's the way it should be. Now, we're kind of done with the basics of XREFs here. So when I told you how to unload them, so as you're drawing, you can unload each level so it makes it easier for you to draw. But let's go through some of the the issues with layers and blocks and that sort of stuff. Okay, so I'll just concentrate on one elevation. Obviously, blocks are going to be a big deal again. You're looking for repetitive elements that exist multiple times in the drawing. Now, if you look at the tower, you can see that there's an obvious repetitive nature to this elevation. You can look for different patterns in different projects. And yes, there is certainly different ways to work with blocks depending on the project. But for this project, I'm just going to give it away to you guys. And again, if you do something different, you're just being cute or you're not listening. But this is what I want you to do. If you look at this building enough, you can see that it's essentially like a wedding cake. It's just layer on top of layer, or floor on top of floor on top of floor. So each floor is a block. Okay? Each floor is a block. That's exactly the way I want you to build it. I've had people do it kind of differently where they've even done dynamic blocks and then copy them up. But essentially all I want is each floor to be a block, okay, for the tower. Now you have different tones of gray here. This is all solid hatching. The lighter gray, color 9, is for the vision glass, and the darker gray is what we call a spandrel glass. That means it's opaque, you can't see through it. Now, if anybody wants to ask me what's spandrel panel or how do I figure it out on the building, Google the goddamn building and look at it. It's very, very clear and very, very simple. This is clear glass, this is opaque glass. Okay, this is called vision, this is called spandrel. Okay, so we have the two tones of gray to help us articulate that. Other than that, I don't think I need to say a heck of a lot about this. I mean, you guys can ask me questions, but I really don't think this should be that complicated. You have to be careful about where the block begins and where it ends. Okay, but you'll hopefully be able to figure that out without too much trouble. When you get to the top, I'm not going to put my cursor over mine. I'm just going to talk and say, I want you to show me your understanding of blocks. Is there repetitive nature to this mechanical level, or is it all unique? I'm going to leave that up to you. Don't get too cute. Just think about it logically if there's a repetitive pattern that could be turned into a block. And I'll just be interested to see what you guys come up with. So I'm not going to give that away. In fact, if I was to accidentally run my cursor over it, you'll see that I kept it not even blocks because I didn't want to give anything away. Okay, so there's nothing here that's a block right now. Okay, so, but I want you to be thinking about that as you design it. Let's go down to the podium. I think you're going to find that the podium is essentially unique. So I don't think there's any instances of blocks here, or if there is, they're not very repetitive. Like you could turn the revolving door into a block, I suppose, but it's all pretty unique stuff. Now, the biggest problem that people have with the podium is also not paying attention to the drawings. Okay, now this is a big mistake and something that happens every year. The section for this, if you look at the plans, the section is cut right through here. That means you're cutting through, the ground floor is obviously open, but you're cutting through the restaurant on the second floor and it's open. Then you're cutting through the kitchen and the restaurant again on this side. Okay, and on the third floor, you're cutting through the roof garden and this is open. So what I'm saying is, and make sure you understand this, this right here is the edge of the restaurant. This is the open area. This is the kitchen and the hallway. So essentially, from here to here is open. It's not in section. This is not in section. This right here, I know it's not hard to see the color of those lines. None of that is in section. That's in elevation. The only things that are in section are the restaurant and the kitchen and the theater. That's in section. You see how it's all white, okay? That's in section, that's not in section. Draw that in section and I'll kill you, okay? So this is essentially a sectional elevation. It's an elevation of the tower, but it's a section cut through the podium. Other than that, I don't know if there's a heck of a lot I can say. I mean, we're working with annotated scale again. You have two different types of annotated scale. So make sure you got the annotated scale set correctly. And yeah, this elevation is the same sort of thing. This is a repetitive element for sure, if you wanted to turn that into a repetitive element, and each floor in the tower is a block. Okay? When I go to Paperspace, you'll see that this is also a lot easier to work with. Setting up the viewports, again, shouldn't be anything different than what we've done before. Make sure these line up. Super critical. Every year, people end up doing, you know, this sort of thing, and that's downright embarrassing. To see a building go down and then angle like that. I mean, come on, you got to be able to set that elevation up correctly. So make sure you do that. And again, the text and the dimensions and the symbols, all of that stuff. Ooh, polyline with width. Polyline with width. Yeah, and in this west elevation, you know, this is the stair tower. Don't screw that up. And in the other elevation, it's the same thing. Okay, you've got one overall at a 32nd of it. Oh, sorry, 16th of an inch. And then two blow-ups at an 1/8 of an inch. Okay, make sure they line up. Make sure they line up. So I don't expect that to be too big of an issue either. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Let me show you a problem people will have with, again, this goes back to CAD 1, solid hatching. Okay, when you go to hatch by default, okay, I've got it set at home to always go to solid hatching by default, but for most people it's set to ANSI by default. And what that means is people end up occasionally doing really dense patterns when this is solid. Okay, you can see it's solid. But let me show you an example of what can happen to a lot of people, and this is not a good thing either. Let me just open up a drawing here. Where did I put it? Put it probably under week 6. Elevation, solid hatch. So this is, I could have grabbed a few of these every year. So this is an old project that someone did. Now, do you look at, does that look funny already? Okay, now I have a really fast computer too, but if your computer is struggling a little bit, I bet you'll find that when you zoom in and out, you see how it almost seems like it's lagging and do it. So my high quality geometry settings, it's saying, hey, it's having a hard time dealing with all this geometry. What do you mean dealing with all this geometry? It's just solid hatching, right? Oh my God, it is trillions of lines. You see? Now, that is not a good thing. And that always happens because when people go to hatch, they don't pay attention to the fact that it's on ANSI as opposed to solid. Then they end up doing, well, let me just show you. I'll draw a rectangle. And then I'll go hatch and choose this. And if you're not paying attention to the scale, oops, you go, oh yeah, look at that. Solid hatching, it's beautiful. No, it's not solid hatching, okay? It's a really dense line pattern. Really bad drafting, okay? Make sure it's solid hatching. Just because it looks like solid hatching doesn't mean it is solid hatching, okay? So it's very important to get that right. I think that's probably the best I can do. I mean, there should be a lot of questions where people will have problems with little things to do with annotated scale, I'm sure. Oh, and layers, I'm sorry, with layers. Make sure you understand line weight based layers in elevation, not object based layers. So these aren't on the wall layer. These aren't on the glass layer. They're on layers. Hopefully this person got it right. Yeah. So we talked about last semester having layers for elevations, bold, oops, sorry, bold, medium, light, hatching. Okay, so A elevation hatch. Let me show you my drawing because at least mine will be a little bit more predictable. There you go. So, oh, sorry, I use different ones. I use colors. So I say elevation PLT1 for color 1, PLT3 for color 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've got, it's the same thing as light, medium, and bold. And then I have A elevation 20% gray and 10% gray. Those are your color 9 and your color 8. Okay? So it's the same thing, but I probably should have stayed in the other drawing because my layers might not be quite the same as what I told you guys to do, but the concept is the same. Okay? Don't be drawing this on layer, wall, and glass, or you're going to screw it up because things that are in the foreground are not the same as things in the middle ground and the background. Also, try to be in mind that, you know, in elevation, this is actually in the middle ground. The tower is in the middle ground because what we're cutting through is in section. That's sort of in the middle ground. This is in the foreground, okay? And even though it's in the foreground, you see how I use more medium lines for the interior lines here? I sort of outline the tower in bold, but I make this a little bit lighter. And I think you'll find that that's a more successful way to work with line weight. We talked about this last semester. I'm not going to tell you there's any one answer. I just want you to show me that you understand the concept of line weights again. And I think this is another really good test of that. Okay, so I think that's it. I'm going to wrap it up. Not a very long one today. So they're both 20 minutes, so about 40 minutes. I'm just looking at my notes here for a second. Yeah, that's fine. Great. Okay, so enjoy. See ya.